Hey guys, so welcome to the second part of our two-part video series about the so-called improved fried liver opening in chess. So I am international master Asaf Givon here, and if you watched the first part, and I hope you did, you saw that we are basically talking about the position arising after the moves pawn e4, pawn to e5, knight out, bishop c4. And in this position, in the previous video, we have discussed the move bishop c5 and how we can still go with a quick d4 knight g5 idea. And in this video, we are going to be discussing the move knight f6, which is once again equally popular move. So basically, when you will be playing this position as white, you will be facing pretty much 50-50 the move knight f6 and bishop c5. Both are equally good moves that players play. The move knight f6 usually is being played by players who do not fear the so-called fried liver. So that would be knight g5. As I mentioned in the previous video, I think the move knight g5 is extremely well studied. Basically everybody knows how to deal with it. It's like I think that it would be too much talking about it. Like, there are so much material, so many videos, so many people talking about it. I wanted to be slightly more creative. So in this position, we're going to be playing the move pawn to d4. Once again, same idea as the previous video. Try to go for a quick d4 knight g5. So the good news is that once again, after the move d4, black doesn't have that many good choices. There is basically one good move in this position, which is to take the pawn on d4. If I kind of summarize everything, the good news that playing amateur chess on online platforms and some quick time control games, after the move d4, you might be facing a lot of moves that your opponents might play, and almost all of them are just very bad. For example, d6 is a pretty passive move that for some reason has a couple of thousands of games on the Chess platform. This is a very passive way of playing. You block your own bishop on the very first moves. It's not a recommended way of playing. And here basically white can do almost anything. You can just castle, you can play knight c3 and gain an opening advantage. But I think the most unpleasant sequence would be just to take on e5, force black to capture that pawn either with the knight or with the pawn, and then you can exchange queens and force black to make like a very unpleasant decision of either moving the knight backwards or taking with the king and losing the right to castle. Both are pretty unpleasant. So d6 is once again the move you are going to face sometimes probably, but it's just a bad move. Knight takes e4 is another move which is pretty bad. White can just take on e5, and the threat of queen d5 slash bishop takes f7 followed by queen d5 with some fork against the king and the knight on e4 is pretty nasty. Like, you will have a lot of games when your opponents will play bishop c5 feeling very good about themselves, attacking your pawn on f2, and you will completely ignore this by playing queen d5. They will be very happy to take on f2, checking your king, winning a pawn. You will casually move the king and they lose. That's it. The knight is hanging, the pawn is hanging, that's checkmate. Also the bishop is hanging. So black has no moves. Next move you take the knight and you win the game. Move number 7, black should resign.
If you would like to get attacking positions in every opening, then I suggest you this amazing course, 10 aggressive openings, blitz friendly. And here I'd like to show you the lessons inside the website. If you are logged in, then you are going to see this new menu profile. If you click it, you are going to see this page, and then you can click here my lessons. From this one you can see your available lessons, and if you scroll down you can click here 10 aggressive openings with Asaf Givon. With this fantastic author we create together the lessons, and you can see here one lesson after the other. You can see typical mistakes, after that how to start the game correctly, the best 10 moves, then you can see what are the aggressive openings, and then you're going to learn one lesson after the other. We have a lot of lessons there, and you can create a very solid and strong repertoire with white and black. And here you can see two of the free lessons that I already published them on YouTube. And last but not least, here you can download the PGN theory on your website. You can download the practice, the PGN files. You can see all of the games online on my website, or if you click here on practice PDF, then you can see the exercises in the PDF format, and you will be available to download this as well. You can set up these positions. You have a lot of interesting examples in each position from every single opening. I suggest you this fantastic course in order to start correctly in every single opening.
And once again, this happened in also a couple of thousands of games on amateur games from Lichess, so that's definitely something you're going to see. So already we saw two very bad moves. Pawn to d6 is bad, knight takes e4 is bad. Almost any other move doesn't make any sense. Why just want to take a pawn? So e takes d4 is basically the only good move, and the only move that we should be worried about. Any other move would be bad. And now we are not going to take on d4, which would be something completely different. We are not going to play the move e5, which is a popular move. And also we are not going to play castles, which is another popular move. We are going to play one of the rarest moves in this position, which is knight g5. And I must say I was very surprised once again by the very few amount of games that this variation has in the database, because it's actually very tricky to face. It definitely deserves more amount of games that it has currently. So you, the viewers, are now responsible to spread this variation like a virus in the online chess community. Knight g5 has a very direct threat, and the reason I called this variation the improved fried liver is because it's basically a fried liver, right? Knight g5, bishop on c4, same stuff that we have seen already in the past. But now starts the tricky part. If black plays the same move that he used to playing, d5, e takes d5. First of all, quick note that knight takes d5 is just a terrible move, which is losing immediately. Both knight takes f7 and queen f3 are very good for white, with a double attack on the pawn on f7, the knight on d5. If the knight moves, it's a checkmate. Terrible stuff. But actually the best move objectively is just to castle and prepare rook e1 and queen f3, and this is just a disaster for black. Like rook e1, queen f3, even queen h5 sometimes. Everything is coming very quickly. Black is not in time to castle, and it's a disaster. He's losing extremely quickly from this position. So after d5, e takes d5. Some players might play those moves that they are used to playing against the fried liver, knight to a5 / knight to e5. Both lead to kind of the same position. We take on d4. They take on c4. Queen takes c4. And in this position, white is currently up a pawn, but black can now just take it with queen takes d5. And now we do not want to exchange queens. That will ruin our whole strategy of putting a lot of pressure on black straight out of the opening. Also, we do not want to capture the pawn on c7. That would be pretty bad, because now black can play something like bishop d6 and get a lot of development going on and castle his queen pretty quickly. The whole point is to give this little annoying check of queen e2. Now, it looks pretty not significant, but it's actually very annoying to face. Black should play bishop e7, white castles, and suddenly black finds out that he cannot simply castle because his bishop hangs. If they play moves such as bishop e6, then we can always capture on e6 and create some weaknesses for black. So usually what they do is they try to kick away the knight with the move h6. They wait for our knight to move in order to play the move bishop to e6. But we have a little bit of a surprise for them. We do not move the knight away, but rather we play the intermediate rook e1, threatening checkmate on e7, forcing black to react. They should probably play something like queen d8, and only now we can move our knight without giving them the opportunity to castle. So for example, knight f3 is very good. And once again, black's position is very annoying right now because he cannot castle. We have a very easy and clear plan of development. Knight c3, perhaps bishop f4, rook d1. Everything is coming very quickly. There are also a lot of tricks that black should dodge regarding his bishop on e7. So just a very nice position for white. Pretty nice position to have after the opening. The same position can be arrived also from the move knight to e5, so it's just the same. So I will just skip the move knight e5, and I'll assume that knight a5 and knight e5 both lead to the same position. So now I want to make a quick note on black's objectively best move in this position, which is queen e7 check. So this is basically the engine's best move. This move was also played by some grandmasters, and it's the best move, no doubts. It's forcing white to make a very unpleasant decision. White cannot just, you know, play queen e2, exchanging queens is not in the spirit of the position. Bishop e2 is passive, so white kind of has to play king f1. On one hand, white lost his right to castle. On the second hand, black had to place his queen on a very awkward square on e7, which blocks his natural development. And also, black cannot capture back the pawn on d5, so he has to move his knight again. White takes on d4, and we reach this position, which once again I was very much surprised by. There is only like one game between the two grandmasters playing in this position in the database that continued queen d7, which is already a mistake. It's actually very weird that black chose to play this way. Knight c3, white just kept his pawn up, and white is actually just having a nice opening advantage here. Black does not have enough compensation. So once again, if you analyze this position with the engine well enough, you will find some ways to equalize for black, for example queen c5. But once again, you're almost never going to see this position, because almost never will anyone play a move like queen e7 against you in an online game. Basically nobody. It's such a counterintuitive move. If they do play it, you play king f1, you take their pawn on d4, the position is very complicated. Even grandmasters went wrong there. All of them will either take on d5 or play one of the knight moves, after which we already discussed what we should be doing. So after looking at the move d5, which I think is a pretty daring move, like if you know exactly what you're doing, you can play the move pawn to d5 and get away with it. But I think as black, I would prefer not to play this move if I don't feel like I know what I'm doing exactly. I think the safer move for black is knight d5, which is the second move that you are going to be facing when playing this variation. If I have to guess, you will face it much less frequently than the move pawn to d5. Maybe like an 80-20 ratio, something like that. Knight e5, we already came across a similar move in the previous video. It defends the pawn on f7, as well as attacking the bishop on c4. We react in the same fashion. Queen takes d4 is the most straightforward move, leading to that position that we have discussed earlier. But I do want to give you like a bonus option for those of you who like crazy variations and some nasty tactics. You can also play the move bishop to b3, which was played in some games of grandmasters. The idea is very bizarre. I cannot really recommend it as a way of playing in every game, but once again, those of you who seek to have some very sharp positions and have some fun in complicated position, black has to play h6 to kick away our knight. And the idea here is just to sacrifice the knight by playing pawn to f4, attacking their knight. If the knight moves, then we have knight takes f7. They have to take our knight on g5. We take the knight on e5. Knight takes e4. Queen takes d4. The knight is under attack. It's a pretty crazy position, which I really like. For those of you who are interested, I encourage you to check it a little bit with the engine, and you can play it in quick time control games. It's a very fun position, but I think I would prefer the other option personally. It's less crazy, and objectively white is not risking losing very quickly. So queen takes d4 is my main recommendation. The knight is under attack. The knight kind of has to take the bishop on c4. Other moves are pretty problematic. For example, d6 is a move that I've never even like in all of the games that I tried when preparing for this video, nobody played d6. It's once again same problem, blocking the way for the bishop on f8. It's a pretty passive move, and you can just continue with some normal developing moves, and bishop f4, knight c3. It's just a pretty normal position, with black having some development issues. So knight takes c4, queen takes c4. Checkmate is threatened, you know, and nobody is going to miss the fact that checkmate is being a threat. Pawn to d5 is a forced move. We have to take on d5. And now, basically, if black takes with the queen on d5, it's going to be a transposition into the same position that we have already discussed on the previous video. I'm sorry, on an earlier section of this video. I'm talking about, if you remember, the whole queen e2 check, bishop e7 castles section, where we try to quickly attack the bishop on e7 and have those tempos against his queen. So it's just a transposition. So you see, you have like 3 ways of reaching this position, which I think is pretty nice for white in the practical terms, pretty easy to play. The other move is knight takes d5. Almost nobody played it. Let me actually check the database. There are very few games here. Basically, it's a much inferior move to the move queen takes d5, because now the knight is pinned. We can take advantage of it by playing the move knight to c3. The knight, once again, cannot move because of checkmate on f7. And black has some troubles with his development because his knight is under attack. The 2 open e and d files are already opened up, so white can quickly try to castle, put his rooks on e1 and d1, and have like an immense amount of pressure against black's position. So already a pretty bad position for black. So to summarize, after the move knight f6, pawn to d4, black only has one good move, pawn takes d4, we play knight g5. Black has 2 options, pawn d5, after which again black has a lot of chances to go wrong. Objectively, his best continuation is queen e7 check. Almost nobody is going to play that against you, and even if they do, we are doing pretty much okay. Knight e5 is the other move that is possible. For those of you who like crazy stuff, bishop e3 is a good move. For those of you who like more like moves that do not risk losing, then you have queen takes d4. After knight takes d4, queen takes d4, queen takes c4, d5. This whole continuation is pretty much forced. You're going to get a lot of games to this position. The most important thing is once again to keep pressure on the bishop on e7, rook e1. You have this nice tempo with knight c3. Try to avoid black from castling as long as possible, and basically white's position is very nice. So this kind of summarizes the second part of our two-part video on the accelerated fried liver, or like an improved fried liver, and I really hope you enjoyed it. For those of you who haven't watched the first part, I encourage you to do so. And with that, we finish this video. Take care, guys.
Thanks for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Here it's time for action. This is the initial page of my website, and here you can click Give me access to get access to free lessons. You can read this page, and if you scroll down, here you can add your name and your email. After that, you're going to take a free lesson how to avoid chess blunders. So, time for action is now, and you're very welcome to join my mail list.